Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Beyond the Second Cognition. I'm Beall. The topic of this discussion is Psoyca crew memory triggers. I'm going to do the best I can to explain this to where people can grok what I'm getting at. We've talked about how the Hapim virus could insert ideas into people's heads, produce artificial visions, stimulate one's emotions to create their spiritual doctrines. The Gutting Mysticism book, when I get it written, and it's not going to be an easy task, is going to cover a multitude of incidents of this type of hive manipulation. Aside from how the hive manipulated human consciousness, Psoyca consciousness, Psoyca sentience, can work in a similar manner to deliver messages, ideas, concepts to people, to get their own messages through, to override and overcome the hive bullshit. I'll use Bringers of the Dawn as an example. Much of the material that was in that book is hive, collectivist, love and light, new agey type shit. But mixed in with that book is a lot of crew messages as well. It contained triggers that would wake up certain aspects of ourselves for those that read the books. The book stated that we have to develop discernment. The discernment comes when we read something and realize that it feels like bullshit. If it feels like bullshit, it probably is. And this is how Psoyca sentience works. It works off of feel, not by how you think. Crew has been delivering messages through different mediums for quite a while now. We get it through books like what was done in the Bringers and Earth Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library. We get it through movies. We get it through certain TV shows. We never really know what the triggers are going to be. But the triggers are there all the same, provided we learn to work from feel rather than just thinking. I'm going to use 3 examples at this point to show how Psoyca crew gets their messages through to us, provided we are attuned enough to dial in on the message and understand what it's talking about. A movie example. There was a movie called Legion. It was a typical end of the world savior salvation story, blah blah. But within that movie, the angels are portrayed as being covered with tattoos. Most people wouldn't think squat about this, and I will get to an explanation for it before this audio finishes. But for the moment, regardless of what the movie stated, the angels being covered with tattoos was a major memory trigger. A recent movie that came out, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, was a really interesting presentation because the supposed good guy in the film, not the hero of the Guardians, but the creator supposedly, was named Ego. And here's a spoiler, if you haven't watched the movie, oh well. But the purpose of Ego was to make the whole universe in his image. And it had the whole light thing and everything else, which was just the hive doctrine. But I was kind of floored when I watched the movie because it was telling you the truth about the hive, which was all ego. If you haven't watched that film, I suggest you watch it with new eyes, understanding the Hapim virus and how it tried to spread itself across the universe. It's a very eye-opening film. The other one is The Matrix, which everyone has talked about. And The Matrix presents a picture of a reality that exists beyond our perceptual reality. the world of Zion. And yes, it has a lot of philosophical, New Agey, theosophical type stuff in it, but there are deeper messages in there and deeper triggers that when people watch the movie, it activates them. They feel charged. So it's another film with an admixture of information. Some of it truth, some of it just a storyline, and some of it the theosophical oneness doctrine of the savior hero, and Neo or the One. But the triggers are there all the same. And you never know what they're going to be. You never know where you're going to find them. You may pick up a book and something jumps out at you and you just go like, oh, fuck, this is like awesome. So Crew is getting their messages to us just as much as the Hive got their messages to people to push forward their agenda. So I'm going to share a little bit more about the angels. When the Orioners created the angels before they were awakened in their genetic laboratories, they were covered with tattoos. And with these tattoos, while they were being placed upon them, covering them from head to foot, they were also putting intent into spell work, or programs, if you will, to where when they woke up, they would be totally and completely compelled to do nothing except follow the orders of their Orioner masters. This is a little snippet of the truth that was shown in the Legion movie. There was hierarchy and structure with the angel aspect of it, the leader being an angel called Metatron, who was eventually freed by death, but the next in command was the angel they call Lucifer. Now, just as the Hive can insert consciousness, or could insert consciousness, through the process of what they call walk-ins, Psoyca sentients can also insert consciousness into material forms because they are basically nothing but AI robots, biological. At some point, Psoyca Crew inserted consciousness into these artificial constructs called angels. They stepped in knowing that they were going to be bound by the spell work and the program work, but their objective was to undermine the whole angel army thing and destroy it because it was becoming too dreadfully damaging across the multiverse. Well, the Orioners got run off of this planet, and the Anunnaki managed to take control and put their own level of spell work on these tattoos, doubling the damage. Long story short, it took 2,000 years from another Psoyca insider working with the inserts like Lucifer and Michael and Raphael and the other angels to undo the spell work on this programming. When they undid the spell work, it freed them from the binding of the programs, and they skipped town. They went to neutral territory. This story has been turned into the Lucifer Rebellion mythology, where Lucifer is the bad guy. When they jumped ship and left Enki, the god Jehovah, sitting there with nothing but his dick in his hand, and no angels to do his dirty work anymore. So in order to perform a type of damage control, he concocted the whole Lucifer myth and made him the Dark Lord to Enki's wonderful godness. As I told you in one of the last few videos, you live in a world of inversion. This is how the real Lucifer Rebellion has been inverted to fulfill the Hive Enki Anunnaki agenda. They have turned a truthful event into a tragic travesty, a divine comedy of propaganda that people still believe to this day. And they make people cringe at the name of Lucifer, which serves the propaganda purposes well. It sows fear and it drives people into churches. But having to undo the program work on those tattoos is what the presentation of data about the angels being tattooed in the Legion movie led to. Psoyca Crew leaves us clues all over the place. Once we get attuned to pay attention to those clues, then it triggers a form of your own Psoyca remembering. And I'm not talking linear memory like humans do. I'm talking about a deep knowing memory. And this is part of what this process is all about, this coming down to reality and knowing things on a deeper gut level without the superficial intellectual knowing of thinking you know something. As I said, we'll be covering the angel story in a book, but I wanted to put this out there because Lucifer's had a lot of bad press, and the victors always write the history. And the victors in that particular contest were Enki and Ninhursag, so they got to write the stories. They got to demonize whoever they want to. And because Lucifer and Michael and Raphael and a bunch of the other angels gave Enki the big middle finger, skipped town and left him holding air, it ruined his agenda. So they concocted all of this bullshit malarkey to create a fear mechanism to keep people looking for Lucifer behind every bush. Look at how religion and the Satan thing all is. That's how that programming works. Keep people fearing an entity who has no regard as to how they live their lives or whatever. But it's a great propaganda tool. And this is only part of the Lucifer story. Ninhursag, Enki's partner, well, she waltzed in and did all sorts of things with that, hiding herself behind his name. And this is where you find it in Theosophy, and this is what I covered in the Luciferian agenda of the Mother Goddess. You see, folks, reality is stranger than fiction. And there is hardly anything on this planet, like virtually nothing, that hasn't been touched and tainted by the propaganda of Enki and Ninhursag and the Hive. You can accept the reality they've dictated to you, or you can weigh and assess the other information and reach a different value judgment. That's all on you. So, for those doing the work, stay the course and don't give up on yourselves.